The film begins with Steve jogging in the morning, as he does every day. When he arrives home, he greets Taylor, the security guard, and then enters the house. During breakfast, his wife Laura asks him if he booked tickets for the James Taylor concert. He tells her he forgot and says he'll contact his secretary Eddie to book them immediately. At that moment, Steve sees his daughter Nicole before she leaves for school. He tells her dress is too short, which upsets her. She responds that it's a personal choice, then leaves for school. Meanwhile, Toby, Laura's son, whistles for the dog, who comes in through the dog door. Toby asks Steve to drive him to school because his car is newer than his mom's. When he says, "Please, Dad," Steve agrees to take him. At the same time, we see Nicole with her friends Gary and Margot. They decide to skip school and head to a bar. At the bar, Nicole sees David for the first time, and they exchange glances. When Margot suggests they go to another club later that night for a dance party, Nicole refuses because she's going out with her father, his wife, and their son to a music concert. She then notices that David is holding an invitation to the same concert. When her father comes to pick her up from school, she tells him she doesn't want to go, but he insists, saying it's family time and they'll have fun together. That night, as they prepare to go out, Steve receives a work call and apologizes, saying he has to urgently travel for a critical business meeting. Laura gets upset, and Nicole storms off to call Margot and tell her she's going to the party after all. Later, Nicole goes to the party with Margot, who leaves her to dance with a guy. Nicole then meets David, and they talk for a bit. Suddenly, a big fight breaks out at the bar. David grabs Nicole and leads her to the rooftop, calling for his friend who was with Margot. When they get to the roof, the police arrive. David climbs down a ladder attached to the wall and tells Nicole to follow him. She listens and climbs down. Afterward, they sit alone together. Nicole tells him her parents are divorced, that she lived with her mother in Los Angeles since she was 9, and that she's been living with her father for a year. She says her dad is very protective. She tells him she needs to leave because it's getting late. When David tries to get closer, she pulls away. He tells her that her reaction makes him respect her even more. When she asks about his family, he says his parents live in the East, love each other, and have never fought. When Nicole returns home, Laura argues with her for being late and not calling. The next day, Steve asks Nicole about the guy she was with. She says it's nothing and that she might not even see him again. Steve tells her she's grounded for being late, she'll have to help with kitchen duties for 2 weeks. From that day, David waits for Nicole after school every day and takes her out. Over time, she falls for him. When he says he wants to meet her family, she agrees. The next day, David visits their home and wins over Laura and Toby, but Steve remains uncomfortable. When David asks to take Nicole out, Steve tells him to bring her back by midnight. David secretly adjusts the clock in Steve's office so Nicole won't be punished if she's late. That evening, Nicole and David go to an amusement park. Meanwhile, Steve sends a design to a client, only to realize the clock in his office was wrong and the deadline has passed. This causes a serious work issue, and Steve is forced to travel immediately. He tells Laura they need to go to Vancouver and wants her to travel with him. The next morning, Steve and Laura prepare for their trip and ask Nicole to look after her brother and not to invite friends over. That night, Nicole calls David and tells him her parents are gone. He says he has something to do with friends but will come by later. She gives him the code to open the door and tells him to come whenever he wants. Later, David enters using the code, takes a family photo of Nicole, Steve, Laura, and Toby, then goes to Nicole's room. He rummages through her belongings and finds a bracelet with Steve's name on it. He takes it. Then he spends the night with Nicole. The next day, Nicole leaves school with Gary. She tells him she loves David, and when he congratulates her, David suddenly shows up, gets out of his car, and violently attacks Gary. When Nicole tries to stop him, he slaps her, knocking her to the ground. The next day, Nicole has a visible bruise around her eye. When Laura asks, Nicole claims she fell during gym class. When Steve sees her before school, Laura repeats the same story. The following day, David comes to school and leaves her an apology note. When she gets home, she finds flowers and another note from him, which she throws away. That night, Steve and Laura hear her crying. Laura goes to check on her, and Nicole tells her what David did to Gary. When Steve enters the room, he finds a condom wrapper under her bed, clearly David's, and some youthful clothes. Realizing David had been in her room, he gets angry and tells her to end the relationship. Nicole refuses, saying, "This is my personal life, you shouldn't interfere. She then grabs the flowers from the trash and opens the attached envelope. Inside are photos of her and David at the amusement park. The next day, David apologizes to Margot, and she forgives him. When Steve returns home, he finds David in the pool with Laura, Nicole, and Toby. He asks Laura, "What is he doing here?" David stares at him defiantly. Steve investigates David and discovers he lied to Nicole about his parent. In reality, David grew up in foster homes. Laura suggests that maybe David was just embarrassed and made up the story out of insecurity, which is totally understandable. Steve drives near Nicole's school and sees David arriving in his car. He approaches him and says they need to talk. Steve threatens him, "Stay away from my daughter. If you come near her again, I'll kill you." Then he walks away. David becomes furious and starts hitting himself violently. Finally, Steve visits his lawyer friend and asks him to investigate David's past and find out if he has a criminal record, and to look for any legal way to keep him away from Nicole. That same day, Nicole returns home extremely angry. She starts looking for her father, and when she finds him, she confronts him furiously. "I can't believe you threatened David and beat him up to make him leave me." When her father replies, "I didn't hit him," she says, "You're a liar, he showed me the bruises on his body." Then she adds, "You've lost all my respect," and storms out of the house. Steve follows her outside and sees her getting into David's car. David looks at Steve with hatred and defiance. Nicole spends the entire day with David, while her father remains worried and calls the police. But the officer tells him there's nothing they can do, as Nicole is 16 and left willingly with her boyfriend. Steve gets frustrated and hangs up. Nicole spends the night in David's car. The next morning, before she enters the house, David tells her, "Come live with me. Leave your father." She replies that she can't. But after he drives off, she changes her mind, gets in her car, and goes to David's house. There, she's shocked to find a wild party with drinking and women, and sees David carrying her friend Margot upstairs. Devastated, Nicole leaves and returns home. When she enters the house, she sees her father asleep on the couch holding his phone. She doesn't wake him or reassure him, but quietly goes to her room. The next morning, Steve finds a note from Nicole apologizing for everything and telling him she has broken up with David and will never go back to him. He goes to her room and tries to talk to her, but she says, "I want to be alone." He replies, "I promise this pain you're feeling will go away soon," and walks out. Later, Nicole goes to school and has lunch with Gary. Suddenly, David shows up and tries to talk to her, but she tells him to leave her alone and starts yelling. Gary steps in and tells David, "Back off. It's better for you." David walks away. After that, Margot comes to Nicole's house, only to be met with a cold attitude. When she asks why Nicole is upset, Nicole walks outside. Margot follows her, and Nicole confronts her, saying she knows she betrayed her with David. "I don't want anything to do with you anymore," she says and slams the door in her face. Margot breaks down crying and says, "He forced me. Please forgive me. You're my only friend." Nicole opens the door again, but Margot has already driven off, crying as she goes. Suddenly, David appears in his car, chasing Margot until she is forced to stop. He gets out and demands, "What did you tell Nicole?" She replies, "Nothing. She figured it out on her own." He angrily responds, "You better convince her nothing happened between us, or I swear I'll destroy you," and drives off. That night, David goes to Nicole's house, but her father opens the door and throws him out. Nicole watches everything through the security cameras and thanks her father for what he did. The next day, Steve drops Nicole off at school. She meets Gary and thanks him for standing up for her. David is watching from a distance. After school, Nicole goes with Laura and Toby to the mall. Meanwhile, Gary is walking through a wooded path when he notices David following him. He tries to run, but David catches up and kills him. At the mall, Laura, Nicole, and Toby are shopping. David is watching them and waits until Nicole goes into the restroom. He follows her in, and when she screams, he covers her mouth and says, "I know you love me. You'll come back to me," then walks away. At the same time, Steve finishes work and finds his car completely wrecked. He's sure David did it. He borrows his colleague's car and tries to drive to the mall, but traffic is heavy. He calls Margot and asks for David's home address. Steve drives there, breaks in, and goes upstairs. He finds a giant photo of Nicole on the wall, and a family photo where David replaced Steve's face with his own and scratched Steve's name off a bracelet, writing his name instead. Enraged, Steve smashes everything in the house. When David and his 4 friends return, they see the destruction. David says, "I know who did this," and they decide to head to Steve's house for revenge. That night, Nicole is at home. Laura gives her a warm drink to help her relax. Then, a hysterical Margot arrives and tells them Gary has been found murdered in the woods. At the same time, David and his friends arrive at Steve's house. The dog runs out and, recognizing David, approaches him, but David kills it. Moments later, he throws the dog's severed head through the dog door, terrifying Toby and causing Laura and the girls to scream. When Steve tries to call the police, he realizes the phone line is cut. One of David's friends sticks his head through the dog door and says, "Open the door." They quickly shut it. Steve says they can't get in without the code. Nicole tells him that David knows the code. David attempts to use the code to open the door, but Steve rushes to the door and manually locks it just in time. He tells Nicole to take Margot and Toby and go upstairs. She obeys, while he and Laura turn off the lights. One of David's friends breaks the glass door with a power drill. Steve hits his hand, making him drop it. Nicole sees a shadow behind a curtain and pushes him off the second floor. Laura helps Steve push the fridge in front of the door. Nicole turns a flashlight on and off from her window to signal the guard, who notices and tries to call the house. When he finds the line dead, he grabs his gun and heads toward the house. When another of David's friends uses an axe to break in, Laura grabs the drill and stabs his hand, causing him to flee. Steve sees the guard's car approaching and goes outside to talk to him, but David and his friends kill the guard, then beat up Steve and threaten to kill Laura if she doesn't open the door. She's forced to unlock it. They handcuff her and Steve using the guard's handcuffs. Meanwhile, Toby manages to escape and runs to Margot's car. One of David's friends shoots at him but misses. Toby gets in the car, runs over the attacker, killing him, and then calls the police from the car. At the same time, David drags Steve to Nicole's room, telling him to say goodbye to her before he takes her away. When they arrive, they find David's friend assaulting Nicole. David shoots him in the head. Toby enters the house and sees the handcuffs on his mother. He goes to retrieve the keys from the guard's body. Laura goes upstairs and finds Margot unconscious. She revives her, then frees Steve without David noticing. At that moment, David points a gun at Steve's head. Nicole begs him not to kill her father, but Steve attacks him. David beats Steve savagely, until Nicole stabs him in the back with a sharp object. David pulls it out and prepares to strike her, but Steve attacks again, and they fight fiercely. Finally, Steve throws David out the window. He falls onto a rock and dies. And that's where the film ends. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video.